CardGamesTV Podcast. General thoughts on card games, Dragon Ball Super being the specific one that I'm currently involved in. Of course, I'm looking into other card games like One Piece, My Hero Academia, looking into those. But I was thinking, what do people like about my podcast? If they like my podcast, right? What is it about it that they look forward to and what they expect? I tend to not get as much feedback as much as I would like to. I would like more feedback. It kind of makes me think, since I got, some people who thought they were giving feedback, but they weren't. They were actually just being disrespectful. That started giving people the impression that they can't give me feedback, which is incorrect. You can give me feedback, just don't be disrespectful. That's the thing. Most people make a habit of trying to make things personal instead of just, sharing information. That's the whole point of talking, right? Communicating. The point of, videos and podcasts and so forth. It's just putting information out there, right? Sharing thoughts. If I put a lot of time and effort into a card game, right, I have a lot to say, right? Makes sense. So why wouldn't I share it with other people who also, play card games, right? And that goes with any activity. So that makes me wonder, it's like, okay, what do people want to hear? Do they want to hear spice? Makes me wonder if that's what people are looking for. They're looking for spice. Because on my channel, I noticed that most of the videos that get the most views tend to be my deck profiles. The second videos that get the most views is some gameplays. But typically, it's the profiles that get more of the attention. I guess because it takes... So I'm just trying to figure out, why, right? Maybe because it takes less time to look at the deck profiles. Since most people don't even watch the full video. That's another thing I noticed. Not many people are watching. I'll make a 30-minute video, and on average, people watch at most 2 minutes, at most. I get lucky if I get 2 minutes out of somebody's time when it comes to my videos, even though the videos are 30 minutes long, which means I spent 30 minutes making, recording the video. That's not including, any editing I might have to do. That takes time. Then the fact that I gotta, upload it. Then the time it took to even create the deck in the first place. Then to test out the deck, to make sure it works the way, I want the deck to work, based off of the concept that I have for the deck. And then I gotta do all that to put it out there, and people only spend 2 minutes on the video. Which I'm assuming means they're only looking at the list. So they just look at the list, since I show the whole list in the beginning of the video or throughout the video. So you don't really have to listen to me per se, but you miss out on a lot of, important information, a lot of ideas and combos and game theories, and the reason why the deck, is built the way it's built, the reason why it might have super combos in it or might not have super combos, the reasoning for it. Like, some people will notice, oh shit, this deck profile has super combos, and then that's it. That's all they say. It's like, that's it, nothing more, nothing about why I have it, the explanation of why it's in there, or especially if I spend time talking about the super combo that I use, and why it's in the deck and the purpose for it. You all you care is that it was in there, and that's it. You don't care why it's in there. You just care that it is in there. So when I don't put a super combo, all you care about is pointing out that, oh, there is no super combo, and that's it. Not the reasoning behind it. So the fact that most people don't point out, details, information that I share specifically, lets me know that people just, they create their own conclusions, right? They create their own stories. So it kind of gets me back to the mindset of, back in the day when I used to make Yu-Gi-Oh deck profiles. Even though I call them deck profiles, I never talked in video. I just showed the list, right? And then put some music to it, put some text to it, and then that's it. I really didn't talk. Then some people, point out the fact that they would like to hear me talk about the deck. It's like, okay, you want to hear me talk about the deck? Yeah, that would make it a deck profile, as opposed to essentially a deck list to music. So, all right, I'll start talking. And, I got some positive responses, because of it. So that was good. So it was something different some people wanted. Then there was the whole, they want gameplay. So then I had to get some gameplay and add it to it. And it wasn't that hard with Yu-Gi-Oh! Consider the fact that we had a, Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro or Edo Pro, where we have a automatic, dual system that allows us to be able to play test, real quick and easy. So since we have a simulator for the card game, it was easy to, do gameplay. As opposed to try to do gameplay in like real life and stuff like that. That tends to be a little bit harder. Because, it's hard to get people to do things that you want them to do. Unless you pay them, unless you're giving people money to play a game with you in order to record it. That's a different story, right? So that's the beauty of like online simulators, is that it allows you to be able to, get as many games out as you possibly can, record as many games, right? And then you can use that as as content if you're a content creator, or at least as archive, right? As proof of your deck's capabilities. Like, look, here's the deck, here's the list, here's the deck in action, so you can see the value in the deck. So here's the proof that you need that the deck is worth giving it a try. And think about all that time and effort spent just to show that a deck is worth trying. When you think it would be enough just to show the list, and then people will be like, okay, this list looks interesting, let me give it a try. But I notice most people are getting lazier and lazier and lazier. So lazy they won't even watch a full 30-minute video, even though there's so much information that's that's in the video. So much, there's so much in the video. There's so much more in the video for the person to get value out of the video, and it's free. It's not like you're paying to watch the video, you're watching for free. So spend that extra time to watch the full video. But oh well, right? Can't make people do something they don't want to do, right? Technically. So it's like, okay, well, if people are going to spend less time checking out my videos, then I'll spend less time making them, right? It's only logical.
That's 1512.
So, little things like that, I do take to account, right? When I get likes, I take that to account, but I prefer, feedback, right? Comments, letting me know, there's something that something is good, right? And that's the main thing is, if you're going to critique, proper critiquing, I actually had to make a video about how to properly critique, is the fact that you got to point out the positive first, obviously, then point out the negatives, and then give a solution for the negatives. Don't just only talk about the negatives, right? What you think, especially if it's an opinion. We need facts. You can't just have an opinion of the deck and then think that matters, that's critiquing. That's an opinion. That's not a fact. A critique is based off of facts. It's based off of something is wrong and you have a solution for it. That's what critiquing is supposed to be. That's the purpose of critiquing. It's because you want the thing to be better and improved, and you want the thing to succeed. So if I create a deck that, is designed to OTK on turn 2 or something like that, and you notice that something's wrong, and it'll be obviously hard to perform the OTK because of whatever reasons, and you're able to, notice it, and you make that, you let me know that there's something wrong, and then you point out, how to solve it. Especially if you took time to test out the idea in the first place, and then be like, okay, I noticed there's certain issues and certain flaws or something. Like, most people would just tell me that, they think something's bad, and then that's it. It's like, okay, you think it's bad, but you don't know that it's bad. There's a difference. I'm not too surprised. Most people out there just love saying negative things just to say it. like, you know, it's their way of relieving stress. You know, they're having issues in their lives. Maybe their decks are not doing so well, right? Like they're playing, you know, at their locals or something, and they keep scrubbing out. And then they see my deck profile, right? And then they decide, you know what, they want to say that my profile is trash, right? Express their feelings, but their feelings is not warranted, right? Their feelings comes from their own inaccuracies, but they want to take it out on me, right? They want to say that I'm doing something wrong when, in fact, it's them that's having the issues. Sometimes some people will have, you know, the opinions that come from the fact that they play a similar deck, so they'll complain like, why play that, you know, the deck that way? Why don't you play it like everybody else plays it? It's like, because I don't. I play it the way I like to play. And the problem is assuming that my way isn't the right way, right? It's assuming that the way I play isn't better than how everybody else plays. It's like, for everybody else, yes, they can play how they play. And if it works for them, great, you know, so be it. But if my way works best for me, then that's what matters the most. It's what works best for me. I don't care what works best for everybody else. That's on y'all. Y'all figure out what works best for y'all, and then just go and just use it. Because to me, what works is what matters, right? So if it works, that's what matters. So do what works for you, not necessarily what works for somebody else. Too many people are obsessed with the idea of, like, they see somebody else do good with something, then they think that by copying off of that person, they'll do just as good as that person. It's like, that's not how that works. That's not how it works. You gotta do what works. So if doing things differently than everybody else works, then that's what you do. You don't do what everybody else does and think it's going to work. And then when you don't get the results you wanted by copying off everybody else, then instead of taking responsibility for the fact that you couldn't make it work, you want to blame everybody else, right? Like if it's everybody else's fault that you couldn't use a deck the way it was meant to be used. You didn't get the results that you expected to get from copying that deck. This is why, you know, one of the many reasons why net decking is bad. Because most people don't even know how to do it properly. You know? Like, to me, people just think just literally copying a deck list is all it takes to net deck. That's all it takes to be as good as the person who you know, whose deck you copied. And it's like, that's not how that works. You need to know how they think. You need to know the decisions they make, how they mulligan, how they combo, how they negate, right? You might think stuff like that is like basic, like, oh, everybody knows how to negate. Not necessary. Because it depends on what you want to negate, what's valuable. I mean, it should be common sense that you want to negate a double strike versus a single strike. But typically, you don't want to take crit damage. You rather take, you know, regular damage. So you would negate something that has crit and take, you know, regular damage from something that doesn't have crit. Even if it's double strike. It's like you rather, I mean, it depends on the situation, obviously. That's the other thing. If all you got is 2 life, you rather take the crit, obviously. Especially if it's just 1 damage versus the double strike. But if you're in a situation where, you know, you rather have card advantage, you rather take the double strike over the crit. So you negate the crit, but take the double strike. Even though the double strike is more damage, you're benefiting from it financially. One, because you're replacing, first off, you're replacing the negate that you played, and second, you're getting a plus out of it, right? You're getting an extra card on top of the fact you replaced the negate. So, because think about it, if you didn't negate at all, you're taking 3 damage, but you're only plusing 2 cards. You're only getting 2 cards out of it if you don't negate either one, you know, the attacks. But this is a way you can reduce the attack and still benefit something, right? Still get something out of it, right? It just depends on the situation that usually determine. This is why it's not always straightforward on how to negate, right? Or how to block or how to out combo. You know, a lot of times it depends on the situation, the board state that determines how you're going to negate, which is why it's important to be flexible, to be open-minded to different ways of doing things. But then back to the mulligan thing, because some decks, you have to have specific cards in your opening hand. And if you don't know what those specific cards are, because you never listened to the person whose deck you copied, because you were too busy just copying their deck and assuming you knew how to play the deck properly, when in fact you didn't. Like some people, be questioning me on some of my decks, which is fair. Questions are important. That means they want to know what's going on, right? They want to know how to play the deck, and I respect that. But it just cracks me out, like with my Hatchet decks, when I'm like, oh yeah, the idea is not to awaken. You don't need to awaken your leader. You're trying to be very defensive through through negates and blockers, and sometimes comboing. And since you're mainly focusing on that, making it hard for your opponent to attack your leader, you don't need your leader to be awakened, right? Now, we know you get some card advantage by the Hatchet leader being awakened, but that's why we have other cards in the deck, like a Unison, for example, that lets you draw, battle cards that let you draw, and your defensive capabilities, the fact that you can, stall long enough to draw a card every turn, and you don't hang. A lot of times you don't even have to charge that much energy. You can probably stop like on 4 or 5 energy, and after that, you just, every time you draw, you just keep the card in your hand. You just don't charge and keep it. So you're already getting some form of card advantage. And that's the thing, is like when you have to take certain things into consideration. If you're not going to awaken with the Hatchet leader, then you got to make sure you have some ways of drawing in the deck. So when I do the decks, like the blue Hatchet deck, most of the Unisons have draw effects. So I'm going to get card advantage anyway, even without awakening the leader. So I have no problem not awakening the leader, because I'm already going to get draw, card advantage through the deck strategy. Plus, the goal is to win the game, not necessarily to draw. Definitely not necessary to get the leader awakened so it has that extra 5k power. Like, that's not necessary. Not saying it's not useful. I'm just saying it's not necessary. You can play the game without awakening your leader, as long as you have a strategy to win the game. Unless your leader on the awakened side is your win con, it's the way you win with the deck. Like let's say Beerus, the Beerus leader. The Beerus leader on the awakened side has the auto win effect. So it makes sense you have to awaken the leader in order to do the 16 energy and win the game effect. That makes sense, right? But if your leader doesn't have a win con built in on the awakened side, you don't really need to awaken the leader. It's not that deep. You can play without awakening, right? So that's a little bit of game theory right there. Or at least should be common sense, but ironically, common sense is not as common as it used to be. So, things like that I'd be thinking about, like, on how I build my decks and play. Is like, sometimes you gotta try different things, do things differently. Too many people are obsessed with the idea of, like, I got to, or convinced, I should say, or they're just stuck in their ways of, gotta awaken my leader. Got to, what is it called? Self-awaken. Gotta take life so I can awaken. They're so hung up on that idea of awakening and awakening early, just because they're trying to get that 15k. It's like they like seeing their leader awaken. They like seeing their leader with 15k power. That's what it feels like to me. Like they prefer to see 15k on their leader, because there's no real logical reason to awaken the leader until late game, where it might be useful. To awaken the leader, especially if the leader is like a draw 2 leader. You might want to save that for late game, especially if you're going up against hand control. Untapped 2 energy leaders, you might want to save them until late game in case you want to do some type of combo to finish your opponent off. Or you try to go for game, right? You tap out to go for game, and then your opponent survives. It's like, oh shit, he survived. Okay, well, I'll awaken my leader so I can untap the 2 energy, right? And now I have the 2 energy for like a Topo, or something like that, or Oceanus or something, or Senzu Beans, Dimension Magic, the works. Flying Nimbus, whatever, floodgate, negate you have, you want the energy for it, and that's why you save the untapped 2 energies for late game. For after you try to go for game but didn't succeed in going for game, you can untap your energy and be able to defend and survive your opponent's clapback, because there will be a clapback. And you should always assume that there's going to be a clapback, so prepare for it, right? It's the same thing as being in a real fight. You don't swing, a whole bunch of punches at your opponent, right? And then be like, all right, my opponent's still standing. They didn't get knocked out. And then just put your arms down, right? Or turn around and walk, try to walk away. No, you keep your guard up, right? You keep your hands up and expect them to come back at you, right? So the same thing as playing, a card game, right? Just like Dragon Ball Super. I think about the card game like it's martial arts, right? Like it's fighting. It is based off of a fighting anime. So logically, the idea of attack, combo, this and that, the fact that we even use these types of terms, being aggressive, being defensive, I even use some terms like defensive stance, which is the concept of being able to attack but still being able to block. So something that has dual attack and is a blocker, so that way you can attack and be able to block. And Bandai has been adding, a lot of stuff like that into the game, right? But this is a concept that was doing before, we started getting more dual attack blockers, or blockers with dual attack in the first place, because, we really didn't have blockers with dual attack for a long, long time. But because BOMA turns things into blockers, I put dual attacks, like red and yellow battle cards that have dual attack, or at least have an auto that lets them restand at the end of the turn, and then put them in BOMA, so that way they become essentially dual attack blocker. That way I can attack and block, and that was the defensive stance strategy, right? But then Bandai was like, all right, let's put dual attack and blockers together on stuff, on battle cards, or just add the auto that at the end of the turn untap the battle card, right? That way you can use a blocker to attack and to defend, instead of deciding, choosing between, like, oh, let me put this battle card for attacking and put this battle card in the deck for blocking. Sword and shield, right? Here's my sword, here's my shield. Instead of it being two separate cards that's your sword and your shield, right? Something for attacking, something for blocking, they're one and the same. A sword and shield, right? Defensive stance. These are concepts. Now they're not concepts, right, anymore, right? Now there are things you can do in the game. Now there's cards that have this effect, where they're, you have unisons that have dual attack and blocker, right? Or have an auto, or have an active main, marker ability that lets them restand at the end of the turn or during your opponent's turn, so that way you can use them to block after you already used them to attack. We even have some finishers, right? Some big, battle cards that you can play to try to, swing at your opponent for game, that also have blocker. They also have either the effect to restand at the end of the turn, or they just have dual attack and blocker, or triple attack and blocker. So you'd be like, all right, I can attack twice, so I have two chances to hit my opponent, or to try to, and then on the third, instead of attacking the third time, I just keep the battle card in active mode so I can block with it. So I have a 35 blocker, you know what I mean? Which has a higher chance of staying on the field long enough. That way next turn, I can try swinging twice again, or 3 times. Whatever it takes to, win the game on the following turn. Right? A 35k blocker with triple attack is delicious. And if I'm right, today I just got my Gogeta thwarting the Dark Empire. If I'm right, it's a 35k blocker triple attack. So that's a good card. Obviously going to be putting that into my Hatchiyak deck. Got to upgrade the Hatchiyak deck, which is why I'm not surprised I'm talking about Hatchiyak in this video, since I am thinking about new lines of plays that I want to incorporate into the deck and make the deck a little bit more synergistic to do the things that I want to do. What else? I'm always trying to improve my decks, especially, I don't want my decks to be predictable. I don't want people to know what I'm doing, right? Because the element of surprise is very important, and it's a very useful tactic. People not knowing what my deck does, even if they know what my leader does, they don't know what's in my deck until I actually use it. right, until I actually use the cards. That right there gives me an advantage. Makes it hard for them to side against me. Since I don't side deck, I need the element of surprise to make sure people can't side deck against me, right? So I can't be playing a deck that a specific hatchback build that everybody knows about, because then they can easily side against it. I don't want that. I don't want people to have kryptonite for my deck. My deck's supposed to be kryptonite for everybody else's deck, right? So these are the kind of things that I think about when, I build my decks. And sometimes I just do very subtle changes. Like I'll change a unison here and there, or I'll change a battle card here and there. I might add more negates, or I play less negates, stuff like that. I change things up, or ratios is what they say, right? I change up the ratios of effects or card types just to throw my opponent off, because I don't want them to be able to predict. They're like, I know he plays 12 negates in his deck, so I can mathematically do the math in my head, right, and figure out the odds of them, me, right, having enough negates to stop my opponent, right, that kind of stuff. So I don't want them to be able to, just figure it out. I want them to always be guessing, always be nervous, always be unsure of the outcome of the match, which is good. That's my advantage. That's part of my game strategy, is that I want my opponent to be, uneasy when they play against me, while I'm just sitting back relaxing, because I know that one, more likely the net deck, so their deck is nothing special. It's just going to have the same old basic stuff that everybody else who plays that similar deck, or plays that deck, or plays that lead or whatever, is going to be playing. So I'm not going to be too surprised with what they play. Plus, I've said it many times before that every deck is pretty much the same deck, just with a different skin. So most people think that every deck is different, but in reality, no, every deck's the same. On average, my decks compared to everybody else's decks is definitely different, but among my decks, like all my decks, they're essentially all pretty much the same. They're all based off of the same, concepts and game theory and game mechanics, right? I'm trying to incorporate the same concepts into all the decks, so that way, no matter what deck I play, I know how to play it. I don't have to memorize different lines of play for every deck, because every deck pretty much uses the same lines of play. Turn 1, whatever I do on turn 1. Turn 2, whatever I do on turn 2. Turn 3, turn 4. The way I mulligan, I try to make sure every deck I mulligan the same way, so that way I don't have to try to memorize the different, choices I have to make when I mulligan for each deck. I already know what choice I'm going to make. It's the same choice that I make with every deck. For example, I tend to mulligan my negates away. So any defensive cards in my opening hand, I mulligan them away. I make the game simple. That's the thing. I make it playing the game simple. I make it winning the game simple. So I'm always trying to find ways to finish off the game with very little effort. Just win the game because I played something, right? Like Android 17 Turn Tides, or Mirror Creator Absorb, or Cell, Perfect Force Cell, or something like that, or Cell Zeno, and the list goes on. Like, of all these different cards that I will use to win out the game relatively easy, just because I played them, and because I, have a strategy to make sure that I do win with them when I play them, right? The goal is to make sure I can play them and then win with them when I play them. And it's that simple. Just like using certain strategies like burn to win, or mill to win, or even hand control. Just make it hard for my opponent to be able to defend themselves, so I could just easily attack their leader and just go for game, just because they couldn't stop me, right? Or play something that my opponent can't negate, can't block, can't out combo. Basically the an unstoppable attacker, something, a perfect thing to swing with, to attack with, because your opponent can't block, negate, or out combo, right? And preferably can't KO it, right, through a card effect. Can't touch it because it has barrier. So having deflect barrier and can't be blocked and can't be negated and can't be out comboed, that's your ideal finisher, is something like that, right? And obviously you want it to have more, you want it to have 15k or more attack power, obviously, right? A 10, or at least be strong enough that, it by itself it can deal damage, since you don't need to combo because your opponent can't out combo. But 15k plus, right? So a 20k that's unstoppable, will be is the least you can you can look for. Let's see, something, ideally you'll probably want something like 15k power, in case your opponent manages to get what's it called, Violent Ray off, right? If they get Violent Ray off, you might want this card to have 15k power, just so you can get under Violent Rays, but still be able to hit your opponent's leader if you have a battle card or Unison, right? That just so happens to have all those criterias. In general, Unisons, even leaders, by default, already immune to counterplay, so you don't have to worry about the deflect part. Since they're not battle cards, you don't have to worry about them being KO'd by card effects, so they're already immune to those, to that, so they don't need barrier. So then the only thing you gotta worry about is block, your opponent using a blocker, your opponent using a negate, or your opponent out comboing your attack. So if you can bypass those three things, then getting your attacks to go through to hit your opponent for the final damage, usually it's going to be the final 2 or 1 damage, then your chances of winning are very high, as long as you succeed in that purpose and that goal and that strategy, which is to get to the point where you can deal the last 2 damage, and win the game. Because I've said it many times before, the first 4 damage is the easiest, so you don't really have to work that hard or put in that much effort to deal 4 damage. The next 2 requires a little bit of effort, right? But the last 2 is definitely the hardest, because your opponent's not going to make it easy for you to deal the last 2 damage, because if they do make it easy for you, then you just always get easy wins, right? So they gotta make the last 2 damage difficult, right? They gotta make it difficult for you to win. But it's your job to figure out how to win, despite the fact that they're going to try to stop you. You definitely don't want stuff that they can stop. I remember somebody telling me once, like, why am I promoting uninteractive wins, strategies like burn or mill or something like that? And it's like, well, these are win cons you just mentioned, and your win cons should never be interactive. You should never want your way of winning, the whatever you're going to do to win the game should not be something your opponent can stop. You don't want your opponent to stop it. It doesn't make it a win con if your opponent can stop it. It's more of a win try than a win con, right? A win condition. It's more of a win try. Like you're trying to win and your opponent, can interact with it, so they stop you. So then it's not really, a win con if they can. So that's why it's like, it makes no sense to be like, oh no, win cons should be interactive. It shouldn't be easy for your opponent to play a certain card and then win because they played this. Like, no, that's exactly how it should be. It's called win con for a reason. If your opponent succeeds in playing their win condition, then they get to win. That's the way it's supposed to be. You shouldn't be able to not lose when they play the win con. You're supposed to lose when they play the win con. That's what makes a win con. You're supposed to lose. And the whole goal is to see who gets to their win con first. Who gets to win the game first. Not, oh, you have your win con? Let me stop you for free because I have God stealing trunks or something. That'd be bullshit. If you can, stop your opponent from winning with their win con for free. As if that's supposed to be a thing you can do. It's like, no. If they have their win con, they should be able to play it and win and end the game. They succeeded in getting to that point, so they're supposed to win. Just like if somebody manages to get to like turn 12 or something, right? And they have 12 energy and they have, a 12 drop card they want to play and it's a win con. Well, they should win. As soon as they play it, the game should be over, right? It shouldn't be, we definitely shouldn't be trying to prevent them from winning with that card. It's like they got to turn 12. and they have the card to play, they should be able to play it and win. Trying to make rules to prevent them from winning will be bullshit. Trying to errata cards so that way people can't win with their win con. It's like, wait, what? But that's their win con. That's how that's how they win. And you're going to take that away from them? That ain't right. Right? So it's the same thing, when you play the game. It's like you're not supposed to make it easy for your opponent to stop you from winning. You're supposed to make it hard for them to stop you from winning. That's why, playing stuff that has barrier and deflect and dual attack or triple attack, the ability to attack more than once. So that way, if your opponent does have a negate, right, does try to stop you, at least you can still, try again. If you play dual attack, that's something I've been promoting for over a year now, is to try to incorporate more dual attacks into your deck, more 30k, so you don't have to combo when you swing, right? So if you have a 30k dual attack, that's amazing. That's 2 potential 30k swings on your opponent, and that's going to apply tons of pressure because of the way the game works. They either waste negates and blockers on the attacks, or they have to waste cards in their hands to try to out-combo the attacks if they don't want to take the damage, or they just take the damage. That's the stuff you have to think about. Just make the game that simple. Play stuff that your opponent has to deal with that makes the game harder. Whole bunch of 30Ks. Shit, if you could put 40Ks in your deck, play 40Ks. Put as many as you can. And swing for game. Right? Swing every chance you get. Right? Don't be afraid to deal damage. Just always make sure you keep your defenses up. That's all I'm trying to say. Keep your defenses up, because if you're not careful, your opponent will beat you. Because you're not trying to stop them. Right? Even if you have the cards to do so, but don't have the energy to do so, well, you put yourself in a bad situation. So make sure you don't allow yourself to be in a bad situation where your opponent can make a comeback and beat you. Right? You want to make the game harder for your opponent, but easier for yourself. That's why this whole, we gotta make things fair and balanced, so so everybody has a chance. It's like, so we trying to do things randomly is what you're saying. So people winning is going to be random. It's not going to be skill based. It's not going to be deliberate because this person played the best, strategy. It's all about luck now. That's one of the issues that I have. When I see, like, in the community or any card game community, when they're trying to promote certain ideas of, like, the idea of balance, when you're not supposed to be balanced. There's supposed to be an imbalance. I'm supposed to have the advantage in a match. That's how you win, is by having the advantage. By being able to do what your opponent can't do. That's how you win. The whole idea of trying to make it where people win by luck, it's like, nope, that's bullshit. That makes the game pointless. It's pointless to play if it's just going to be random. It's going to be luck-based. If the outcome is not determined by me, the player, then there's no point in me playing, right? Because technically, since the outcome is not determined by me, why am I involved? Why am I playing the game if I'm not going to be the one that determines how the game ends, right? This game is not like you build a deck and then that's it. You build a deck, you submit your deck list to a tournament, and then that's it. You don't even have to go to the tournament because your deck will play by itself. You're just waiting for the results of the tournament to see if your deck win. I mean, imagine if that was a thing. That'd be hilarious. That'd be an interesting idea, like for like a YouTube video or something. Just have people building decks, like deck lists, and then just submit it to an event. And let's say, well, technically, somebody has to physically play the deck, unless we use like AI or something. And then you just have some people just, randomly play a deck, or they choose your list and be like, all right, I'm gonna play this deck. And you literally have somebody else playing your deck and, see what happens, right? But you as the player, the deck builder, hopefully you're a deck builder, right? You as the player, supposed to be able to determine the outcome. The reason you're playing a certain deck is because you want to win, right? Yes, you want to have fun. We all do. Winning is fun. So why not do that, right? Why not win while having fun, right? So really be thinking about, like, you know, 'cause I'm not a content creator, so I'm not like trying to think of things to entertain people or anything like that, which makes me wonder, like, what is it that the people who do follow me, who subscribe, right, you know, who do like some of my videos, what is it that they're looking for, right? Like, what is it they want? More likely, they probably want entertainment. They do want information, but it's hard to say exactly what is it that they're looking for. Like, what I don't know if my audience is, you know, casual or competitive. More likely, they lean a little bit more towards competitive, but, you know, it's hard to say. You know, unless I get feedback, and that's one of the odd issues that I get, because you think I would be getting a lot of feedback, especially with a lot of people, not a lot, but, you know, a couple people here and there out of the blue saying that I'm bad or judging me or you know, or quote unquote critiquing me. Like, you'll have some people, they'll be like, oh, have you topped an event? Have you played at an event? As if that's the only measure of playing a game. Like, you have to go to a tournament in order for you to be considered a card game player. It's like, no, you don't have to go to a tournament. A tournament is just an opportunity to compete with other like-minded players, right? With other people who wants the experience of being able to play multiple games back to back and see who, you know, who wins the most at that point in time. That's all it is. It's nothing more than that. It's not a true measure of, you know, individual skill or decks. You know, some people like to think that, like, oh, this is the best deck in the format. It's like, okay, I disagree, you know, but hey, if it works for you, it works for you. But, you know, usually I can see, you know, decks that are like really, really good, that have a lot of potential, but most people don't see those decks. They always see something else and give something else credit when it doesn't really deserve it, but whatever. Hey, whatever works, works, right? I keep saying that. Whatever works, works. So if it works for y'all, fine. Even if it's subpar, even if I see, you know, that there's better decks you could play, if what you're playing works, that's all that matters. Because, you know, some people like to think that the only thing that's good is something good, right? They think that the deck has to be perfect in order for it to be good, when in reality, the deck could be trash and still be good, right? Because I believe that the player determines the deck's capabilities, not the deck itself. The deck has options, right? The deck has cards. You put cards in your deck, right? You got nice little spices in there, right? You got a whole bunch of options in there to choose from when you play. But how you play, the decisions you make, even the decisions your opponent makes, those factors, you and your opponent, is ultimately what determines, you know, the outcome of a match. That reminds me when I went to play that local event where I didn't know much about my game one opponent, my round one opponent, you know, deck. I didn't know what the leader did, didn't know what a lot of the cards in his deck did, like a lot of what the battle cards did, because, you know, they're new cards, right? It's the it's the Trunks Vegeta yellow deck. So I didn't know much about how the deck functioned. Of course, I learned really quick from, you know, from game one on how, you know, the deck functions just by seeing it in action. But I still didn't have like all the effects memorized and stuff like that. I didn't care much, because to me it was just more about attack power and this and that. I make the game simple for myself, so I try not to focus on too many details. Just, you know, how many times my opponent can attack me, how soon can they attack me, that kind of stuff. How much damage they can deal, and the chances of me taking less damage. Because if they have a whole bunch of 15Ks in their deck, then, you know, I have more of an advantage, right? If they have a whole bunch of 30Ks in their deck, I'm like, I'm at a disadvantage. Because that level of attack power is not, it's not easy to out combo. When it's 15K or less battle, you know, power on battle cards and unisons, then it's easier to out combo, right? If I have to combo. Of course, I try not to. But if my opponents are playing a whole bunch of 30Ks, it's like, yeah, that's going to be tough. I definitely can't out combo those things, which means I have to negate and block as much as possible. And if they can put out a whole bunch of 30Ks a turn and swing with a whole bunch of 30Ks, then that definitely puts me in a bad situation. I mean, that puts anybody in a bad situation. I'm just saying that, you know, if I'm in that situation, it's bad. But if I'm not in that situation, then it's just regular Dragon Ball Super for me. Basic Dragon Ball Super. And I'm used to doing a lot of crazy, you know, wombo combo type stuff. I'm always doing some next level shit anyway. So when somebody does bring a deck to me, right, I play against a deck where they're doing some like really cool, you know, unique things, right? They got some cool strategy that comes in the archetype. Then I'm like, you know, I think it's cool, right? But not too surprising, because I'm like, I do shit like this generically anyway, so I'm not surprised when an archetype does something, right? Like, I wasn't too surprised with the launch deck or even King Piccolo deck, and I went to an event where I played against King Piccolo, and I had the advantage easily. I had the advantage against the King Piccolo deck because my deck does what it does, and it's the original, right? Because I've been doing that strategy for the longest, so it just tries to do what I do, right? So nothing new. So it's not like it was a surprise where I'm like, oh damn, what you doing? Oh, what does that do? What does that do? It's like, no, I'm just, oh, you're gonna summon a whole bunch of stuff and try to attack me with everything. No, nothing new. My deck does the same thing. It summons a whole bunch of attackers and attacks for a lot, right? So I simplify the game, you know. It's like I'm you know, I got the whole been there, done that concept where it's like, well, I've been done those types of things, so, you know, none of that stuff is new to me. I just don't know, you know, the exact effects of your cards, but I see what your deck is doing and is capable of doing. It's like, okay, it's doing this, it's doing that. It's either a control deck or aggro deck. That's why play styles matter, because it's like, no matter how many different archetypes gets created by Bandai, a lot of these archetypes are archetypes are going to fit within certain play styles. You know, aggro, control, mid-range, you know, stuff like that, right? Mill, burn, hand control, right? Board control, draw control, energy manipulation, you know, the list goes on of all the different types of, you know, concepts you can think of. You know, defensive stance, right? They'll attack you but still be able to block you. You know, all types of different things. But ultimately, you know, everything is pretty much simple and straightforward. If you play one aggro deck, you play them all, right? That's what I'm trying to say. You play one control deck, you play them all. You play one hand control deck, you play them all, and the list goes on, right? That's what I'm trying to say. It's like, once you get used to certain play styles, it doesn't matter what deck your opponent's playing. It doesn't matter if it's an old deck or a new deck. You already have the experience from playing against a certain type of strategy, certain play style, and that right there gives you all the experience you need to play against any deck that incorporates that play style. You know, if you played against Janimba, Mill Nimba, right? Well, you have experience to, you know, when it comes to Cooler Mill and Android 16 Mill and Android 21 Mill and what else? Shenron Xeno Mill, and there's a couple other mill decks out there. But you get the idea, is, you know, that you want to learn all these different, you know, play styles, right? And then that, right, by default, just gives you the experience against all these different decks. So it doesn't matter what your opponent's playing, because if you played one control deck, you played them all. Like, that's what I'm trying to say. That's why I always say that every deck's pretty much the same deck. It's just different skin, right? Different colors, different artwork, different energy costs. That's it. It's very rare for anything to be so unique and so different that, you know, people will be like, damn, this deck is so unique and different that no one has ever really played against something like this. So people need to learn this. It's like, nah. Even when they start doing the unison thing, where they start making archetypes based off of playing a whole bunch of unisons, it's still aggro. That's it. It's unison aggro. It's using unisons to aggro your opponent. Yeah, if you already know how to play against aggro, you know how to play against these unison-based decks, right? Common sense. If they use a whole bunch of unisons to counterplay, right? Well, if you play control against control decks, a heavy unison deck, a heavy counterplay unison deck is not that different from a regular counterplay deck. So, right, a control deck. So if you play a control deck, you know how to deal with this. The list goes on and on. So I never have to worry about play testing a lot against a lot of these newer decks because there's nothing too special about them, right? If you played against one aggro deck, you played them against all, right? And with that in mind, the deck that I was talking about, the whole Trunks and Vegeta deck, well, I beat the deck easily, and it was my first time playing the deck against the deck, and I beat it because it's just like, oh, this is not too special. It's not too different, too new, right? Some people like to think, oh, this is a new archetype, new deck. You gotta learn all the new stuff. Like, no, there's nothing here to learn. It does a lot of the same stuff that a lot of other decks used to do. You know, this is trying to be an aggro deck, a yellow aggro deck. That's nothing new. And I already know how to play against aggro, period, let alone yellow decks. So I know Flying Nimbus is around, right? Crusher Ball or something similar to that. So it's like, yeah, this is nothing new or special. So I already know how to deal with it. So it's not surprising that I won against that deck. I still have to edit the video of that match, that game, and upload it. But that was the point. It's like, I didn't need to play test against that deck in order to play against it, because I already have the experience to play against the strategy, the concept, right? These play style. So I didn't need to play test against the deck. Sometimes there's certain cards you need to know how to deal with. That I agree with. Some cards by themselves are so different, so unique, that it does require you to have some experience, right? Like Baby Hatchiyak, the Boo Unison. That's a problematic unison that I've had some experience with. It is good, so good that I bought me a playset, obviously, and I got my playset, so I'm putting that in my Zamasu deck. But anyway, you know, it's like, it's a good unison. And I was thinking, like, damn, how can I deal with this unison? Because this unison actually is a problematic unison. This, and even the Jiren, 3-drop Jiren unison, so the Pride of University 11 or something like that. Even that, I had even stuff like that. So pretty much any unison that has the ability to do stuff on your opponent's turn are unisons you need to look into, right? You need to beware, is what I say. Beware of them. Make sure you have ways to deal with them, because they can do stuff on your turn, so you gotta be careful. So any unison that can do stuff on your turn are problematic unisons. Other than that, most unisons don't really matter, because, you know, all their effects are on your opponent's turn, so they're not much of a problem. You could just attack them and pretty much try to get them off the board, and that's if you want to. I don't recommend wasting any valuable attacks on unisons. But if it's a unison, especially a blue unison, so that means, you know, God-Sealing Trunks is there, then yeah, that you have to be careful of. So that's why the Boo unison with God-Sealing Trunks is very problematic. So that's something I gotta beware of. Not that I gotta be afraid or anything like that. Obviously, just beware. Like, beware that is a thing. That the Boo unison is so good in more ways than one. Not just the fact that it's a blue unison and God-Sealing Trunks and stuff like that. There's also the fact that the effect on your opponent's turn is good. It's a blocker, It has the ability to draw a card and untap energy, and it's 20k double strike, so it can kill unisons. It can definitely apply pressure to the opponent. It's defensive, very good at defense. It can potentially stop 2 attacks, being a blocker, plus its -1 ability. And then of course Gaussian Trunks being an option, so that's potentially 3 things you can, three attacks you can stop, right? 3 potential damage you can stop with those, just that card, plus the fact you untap an energy, so you could play a negate or Sensibine or something like that with your leader, and be able to play multiple negates. So many options. And then of course drawing a card is always good because card advantage. So with all that being said, obviously that boy good. So that's why it's like I had to figure out like, how can I deal with that unison? It has been getting in my way a couple times when I played online and at that event, that local tournament I went to. What can I do about it? And so far, my current solution is, if you can't beat them or it's hard to deal with them, join them, right? So make my opponent struggle with the Boo Unison by playing my own Boo Unison. So that's why I have them. So my out to the Boo Unison is to play the Boo Unison and just have a Unison battle, basically, right? I'll try to knock down their Boo Unison with my Boo Unison. And hopefully I can protect my Boo Unison with like a negate or something, so that I can, keep applying pressure and keep attacking his Unison until I kill his Unison. Right? So that's the idea there. So that's the kind of stuff. It just, sometimes you just got to know how to beat certain cards, like Black Mass Saiyan, for example. If your opponent plays the 1-drop Black Mass Saiyan, having cards in your deck that can easily get rid of them, like a leader, a unison, an extra card, battle card that has an effect to KO the card or warp the card or something, that'd be useful. I mean, it'd be funny for you to take the battle card away from your opponent, be like, all right, I'm gonna play this card which lets me steal your Black Mass Saiyan. Now when you play a battle card 15k or higher, through effects, you pitch 2 cards from your hands, right? That kind of stuff. So like that kind of thinking. But other than that, it's like sometimes you gotta deal with certain tech cards, a Baby Hatchiyak or Topo or Oceanus, or even a Floodgate negate like Violent Rays, or Dormant Potential Unleashed or something like that. Like these types of little things you gotta be aware of, and keep in mind that these are the things you might have to deal with. But other than that, other than these little generic cards, spice and whatnot, most decks are pretty much the same. People are going to be playing stuff that has 15k or more attack power if they're going to use it for an attacker. If they play anything weaker than 10k, for example, or weaker than 15k, it might be a blocker or it might be a super combo or something of that nature. It's the only reason the battle card will have low attack power is because there is being used more for its effect than it is for its power, obviously. If it has high attack power like 20k, 25k, 30k, 40k, right, stuff like that, clearly it's meant to be used as an attacker, right? Unless it's a blocker with a high power, then it's probably used for blocking. But if it has the ability to attack and restand to block, then it's used for both purpose, right? Offense and defense. Basic stuff like that. So I'm getting into a lot of, obviously game theory and game concept, which hopefully that's what a lot of people want to hear me talk about different, strategies, my insights to gameplays. So as opposed to just, talking about cards and cards that came out, or products, or, or the community, stuff like that. I doubt people want to hear me rant about things that I see in the community that I might not be a fan of, But if I have a rant, I have a rant, right? But more likely, I assume that people want to hear me talk about, spice, right? Certain cards that are good that they probably already have, and then they're considering trying it just because they heard me talk about it, because I was able to, explain why I think it's useful, why the card is good in my mind, in my eyes, right? and then they might want to give it a try and see if it's useful. And I'm all for it, right? Because I agree. People need to do that more often. Is try new things, try different cards. Come up with new spice. You should always be improving your deck. Always trying to change cards in your deck. Every time you go to an event, right? Every format you're always wanting to improve, because you always want to stay ahead of the game, right? You don't want the game to surpass you, right? You don't want everybody else to start, you don't want to be the person whose deck still consists of a lot of 10Ks, 15Ks, right? And your opponent and everybody else is playing a whole bunch of 40Ks and even 35Ks in their decks, and you're like, y'all battle cards are strong as hell. That's a lot of attack power y'all battle cards have. Mine don't have that level of attack power. Maybe I need to upgrade. Yeah, you should have been upgrading the whole time. Your deck shouldn't be still, a whole bunch of 10Ks, 5Ks, 15Ks. Like, you should already be, playing a whole bunch of 25Ks and above right now, because every year I'm always trying to, play stronger things. Technically, there's no need to go anything stronger than 25K or 30K. 25Ks and 30Ks are just good enough. Like, there's a lot of good 25K battle cards and 30K, battle cards that you can play that are generic, or are archetype specific. So you don't really need anything stronger than that. But if you can put 40Ks into your deck, or have a strategy where you can always swing 40K at your opponent, then that's what you want to do. You want to make sure you can swing 40K, 50K, 60K, 100K. Imagine that, 100K every time you swing. Imagine that, man. The reason why you want these high attack powers is because you're trying to reduce the possibility of your opponent out-comboing your attack. And if your opponent does manage to out-combo your attack, hopefully they wasted a whole bunch of cards from their hands to do so. So you're kind of doing like a hand destruction type thing in that regard. So that's why I'm always, promoting the idea of not comboing. Don't waste your hand. Keep your hand. Play stuff that's strong so your opponent has to combo. You want to put your opponent has to either A, out-combo your attack, or B, just take the hit. And that's what you ideally want, is them to take the hit. You want a win-win situation, right? You want a double-edged sword. You want them to either A, take the damage, or B, lose half their hand size. One of the two is a win-win for you. Whether you deal them damage or you destroy half their hand because they out-comboed your attack. That's ideally what you want, one of those two. So you always keep that in mind, that you want to force your opponent to either A, take damage, or B, reduce their hand size drastically. Just because you attacked. Think about it. All you did was attack. You didn't do nothing too special. All you did was swing with something that's 30K or 40K. And now you force them to either take a hit or lose their whole hand size. Granted, blocking and negating are options, right? But if they're using that to try to stop you, well, they don't have it later when they might need it to stop you from winning, right? Especially if you're swinging 30 and 40K, early game. So turn 3, turn 4, turn 5, you're swinging with a whole bunch of 30 and 40Ks. You're obviously going to have the advantage in that regards. And you want to simplify the game and make the game simpler for yourself. So just keeping that in mind, just saying, look for a whole bunch of 30Ks and 40Ks you can try to put into your deck. That's the thing, you got to make it fit. Some people are just waiting for an archetype where it's like, oh shit, this is like Dark Broly, but with 40Ks. Yay! I mean, think about it. I was already trying to do the whole 30K thing before the Dark Broly deck was even a deck. But once the deck came out, suddenly everybody wants to play 30Ks. It's like, oh yeah, 30Ks. 30Ks are good. They always was good. But then, when Bandai makes it an archetype, suddenly everybody, thinks it's a good idea. No one thought it was a good idea to have a whole bunch of unisons in a deck until Bandai made 2 archetypes so far that are unison heavy. Now everybody, trying to play up to 24 unisons. Like, now y'all trying to play a shitload of unisons in y'all decks. I wonder who's been doing that for years since unisons came out. Oh well, I can't think of a name of that person, and that's the end of the podcast.